Hello, welcome to Web of Stories. My name is Melinda. I have my Big Book Summer Tumblr. And welcome to my weekly wrap-up. I normally film these on Friday and put them up on Saturday, but as I said last week, because Friday was the 4th of July, an Independence Day in the United States here, I was going to do it on Saturday and put it up on Sunday. So there you go. Also, this past week spanned a month, so some of the books that I am going to talk about, I talked about in my monthly wrap-up, which went up on Thursday. So I will just sort of touch on those a little bit, but I do have some other books to talk about too. But anyway, how are you all? I am recovering. We had a great-ish, actually it was a really strange 4th of July. It started, I mean, it was good, but it was, I'm sorry, I'm crooked. It was good, but it had its moments. So we went to the parade in our town, which was fine. Friends, it was great. I will, if I remember, I'll put some like little video clips of it on at the end. I'll have to put music over because I was sitting between two friends and one of them is very talkative and I don't really know what she said while I was filming, and who knows, there might be something that maybe shouldn't be on the internet out there. So I'll have to take the volume off and put music over it or something. And that was great. And then afterwards, like we had my daughter's cat sitting, we had to go stop and do that. Came home, and a couple hours later, friends came over, two of my friends came over for just to kind of hang out and have a barbecue. One was Bookish Best Friend, and the other was my friend Sandy, who I had been at the parade with. And Bookish Best Friend got there first, and we're talking, and all of a sudden I hear a lot of swearing coming from over our fence. We're sitting in the backyard. And it was very clear there was a situation over there. It sounded like a bad breakup situation, and it sounded like it was escalating. So first time ever I had to call 911 on the 4th of July, and not even for the reason you would think I had to. They left right after I made the call. We called the police, told them not to come, and gave them follow-up information. So I'm assuming everything ended up well. But that was like the start of like the kind of weirdness. It just was, it kind of set a weird tone for the afternoon. Plus, you know, this is life in America. So there was that. Though my friends and I, we had our little cookout and we ate, and then they went home early because they both have fur babies to take care of. My friend Sandy brought hers over, who was such a sweet dog. Her name's Quirky. And then a little bit later, one of my husband's coworkers / friends who has a son my son's age came over so they could all blow things up. I drugged the cat, sat inside and read while they blew things up, and iced my knee. That was that. I do have a pain, the moving pain update. My knee still hurts, but now I have a jaw thing. And I think it's because when I get stressed, I grind my teeth at night. And I had this a lot, like a few years ago, from like 2017 to like through 2020. I had this a lot, and then I had a couple of years where I didn't have it, and now I'm starting to have it again. But anyway, it hurt. Of course, we're cooking hot dogs, which are hard to eat when your jaw hurts, because it just is. Anyway, that kind of made it so I didn't eat too many hot dogs. I know you all needed to hear that. Anyway, today I'm very tired because it was just a late night. The 4th of July, even if I don't go out into the firework thing, because I don't like fireworks, it's still a late night because everyone else in my neighborhood does fireworks. And then this morning I got up to meet some friends for coffee, and I was running late. And then this is where I have to come clean about something. I don't have a full face of makeup on, guys. My hair's up. And I was like, oh man, but I'm filming today because I knew I was going to be filming this video. And I just have to give up the idea that I have to present perfectly. I mean, when I do my vlogs, I don't always. You see me without makeup and running around and all that. But I just give it up. I mean, we're all friends here. It's okay if you see me when I'm not completely made up. I don't need to do that. So I'm working on that. Anyway, that was my 4th of July. It was, as I said, interesting, but fairly good. Oh, I was so proud of my kids. I forgot to say this. We got home from the parade and the pet sitting, and my daughter walks in. She's like, well, it's time to watch Hamilton now. So we watched Hamilton. We watched most of Hamilton. We watched the rest of it like after people, in that time between when my friends left and my husband's friend came. And then we started watching 1776, mostly because I wanted to show my kids where the reference, sit down, John, from Hamilton came from, because that's from 1776. But then we just kind of kept watching. We got about halfway through it. 1776 isn't the engaging musical that Hamilton is, but still was kind of hope-inspiring, so that's good. You kind of need that. But anyway, that was my 4th of July, with the pain and the 911 call, everything. But anyway, we're back to normal life now. I'm recording this a little later than I had planned to because I did have coffee with my friends this morning, as I usually do on Saturdays. But also, I had to finish a book before this, but I will get to that. Because I'm going to say quite a bit about that book. But let me start with what I finished since last week. I finished 6 books. Is that right? 6 books and 1 DNF, which I know sounds like a lot, but really we had some audiobooks in there. I had 2 audiobooks in there. I had a short story single, so in a Shakespeare play. So there you go. The first thing I did have was a DNF, and I mentioned this before, but this was the Grief Keeper by Alexandra Villasante. I may go back to this. If I do, it'll be on audio. This was just it has nothing to do with the book. The book is good. But I am not the reader for this book because, as I said in my wrap up, YA fiction can be hard for me because I live with YAs and sometimes it just makes it kind of hard to read. And that was just kind of the case here. So, I know people who really like this book. It's probably a great book. Don't take my word for it. That it just didn't work for me. Put that over here. Oh, some of the books that I own, I'm going to have to put pictures up here because I stupidly put all the books that I had finished into my bookshelf after I did my monthly wrap up. And on 2 of my shelves, because I can't complain about the shelf situation right now, but on 2 of them, I've had to go double level or double, 2 rows of books on one shelf. And of course, the 2 books that I would have had are on like the second row, and I didn't want to mess with getting them out. So I'll just put pictures up here. And the first of those books is A Midsummer Night's Dream. I won't say much about this because I did a whole video on it, and I will link that down below. Everyone's already read A Midsummer Night's Dream because almost everyone has to read that in school. And then I finished this book, which I did on audio, even though I own it. It was a self-destruct book, and that was The Guest List. Probably would have DNF'd if I read it because sometimes I can take things on audio that just I can't when I'm reading. And I read a book earlier this year that kind of made me aware that domestic thrillers, this isn't really a domestic thriller, but is a little bit of that, kind of that feeling, aren't really books for me. But this is, and then there were none-y-ish sort of thing. It was fine, but it probably would have irritated me had I read it instead of listened to it. Did have a full cast recording, which was really good. Pretty predictable, honestly. I gotta be honest. But it was an entertaining time. I gave it 3 stars, and it's off my self-destruct list. So there's that one. And then I had my Agatha Christie, put that up there, which is They Came to Baghdad. This would be a fantastic movie. I talked about this in my wrap up. I would highly recommend it, although it is, I think, atypical for Agatha Christie's books. It's much more I don't want to say madcap, because when I say madcap and Agatha Christie, I think of like, what are their names? The couple, from Secret Adversary, Tommy and Tuppence. There we go. And this is not like that, but it is kind of like you have like the main character is a compulsive liar. And she gets herself in situations. So yeah, it's very action packed. I think it would be a great movie. It was entertaining. It was one of those books that I kind of had to wait until I got to the end to really know how I thought about it though. So, and then the final book that I finished in June this week, I forgot to talk about. Did I forget to talk about? Yes, I forgot to talk about this in my wrap up for some reason, and I don't know why. Well, one reason is it's like a Kindle single, and this is The Weddings by Alexandra Chee. I had a little bit of time left at the month. I wanted to put in another Pride book because one of the books I was reading for Pride, I knew I wasn't going to finish that week, so I wanted something, and I looked on my Kindle, and I had this one. The Weddings is about this guy going to weddings. I guess it takes place shortly after Obergefell, and he's invited to a wedding, male-female wedding, of someone that he had a relationship in the past. And it was interesting. It's a short story like that. Couldn't really be fleshed out probably to the level that I wanted it to be, but it was fine. Alexandra Chee, I was a little iffy with because I've only read one thing by him. I read Queen of the Night, and Queen of the Night didn't completely work for me. But it was fine. It was fine. 3 stars. It was fine. Okay, now let me get to what I finished in July. I will talk more about these. And the first one is an audiobook that came, that was recommended to me by Bookish Best Friend and by the My TBR service, which, Sue, I think I have a comment waiting for Sue Jackson, wanting me to know what this is. My TBR is a service through Book Riot, where every quarter they send you 3 book recommendations. You fill out a questionnaire, what you want. You can always change it between each time, which I've done because sometimes my tastes just change. And they send you recommendations. And a lot of the recommendations are great because they're things I've never heard of. This one I had heard of, which is fine. But this came through it. I was a little... So that was Arsenic and Adobo by Mia P. Manansala. Let me get her. Yeah, Mia P. Manansala. So this is the first in the Tita Rosie's Kitchen Mysteries. And the main character, Laila, is Filipino-American. She had been in Chicago, but she has returned to her small town, hometown in Illinois to help her aunts and grandmother run their restaurant. And of course, murder happens. Actually, in this case, it is her ex-boyfriend who dies in their restaurant. And things ensue. It's a very cozy mystery. A lot of food writing. So if you like food writing, this is a good one, because I do think the food writing in this was really good. But it was a reminder to me that I don't really like cozy mysteries. It just was a little too cozy for me. Also, because I read a fair amount of crime fiction, probably not as much as I have in years past, but I do read mysteries and crime fiction. I sort of know at this point, like, what police do, right? And things would happen in this book and I'd be like, but you're the police officer. I'm like, why didn't you do this and this and this and this? So it really bothered me that happened. And I'm like, ugh. I also felt like the tone of this book and what was going on in this book was the tone and what was going on. There was a disconnect. I felt it was a little bit light for what was actually happening. And so there was that disconnect for me. So this didn't work for me. However, I think Mariandria said she really enjoyed it. Bookish Best Friend really enjoyed it, but Bookish Best Friend said she liked it for the food writing. Also, a Filipino food is not really my thing. In fact, I don't know if I've ever actually had it, so I shouldn't say it is or isn't my thing, but it's not like if it were Italian food, I'd be like salivating over it, right? There are recipes in it, so that's always good. No, I had the audiobook, so it didn't really matter because whatever. But if you're if you're into that sort of thing, this would be a good book for that. And finally, my 6th book, which is from library, so I can't hold it up, is, as of right now, and has a very high potential to ultimately be my best book of the year. I know, right? It took me it took me a little long. It took me 10 days to read this, but only because I had mentioned it to Mariandria saying we should buddy read this. And then I forgot I had mentioned it to her, and I just started it. And then she said, oh, let's buddy read it. So I said, great, I'll just stop where I am until you catch up. So there was like a day where I didn't read, and then I was busy for the 4th, so it took a little longer than it probably should have to read. But this book I first heard about from Brett at Brett's Book Stacks, who is sort of a consistently good source for recommendations for me. And I had mentioned it to Bookish Best Friend, and she ended up reading it before I did. Said she really loved it. So at that case, it just became me waiting for my library hold to come in. And this is, I have to be clear on this. This is Woodworking by Emily St. James. The reason I have to be clear about this is because when Bookish Best Friend told me she was reading it, I said, oh yeah, that was a really interesting book. And then I realized that she's talking about woodworking and I'm talking about woodworm. And those were 2 very different books. But anyway, Woodworking. Woodworking is set in October and early November of 2016 in a small town in South Dakota. And it focuses on 2 characters, Abigail and Erica. Abigail has just transferred to this high school, or she's transferred to this high school because she has basically been rejected. She's a trans girl, and she was rejected by her family when she came out, most of her family. So she's gone to live with her sister in this town and go to school there. This is a very conservative town, and as I said, it is October 2016. And everyone in the school knows she's trans, because there was an issue about her coming to school and it became a thing. Everyone knew about it. The other character, Erica, is a teacher at this school. She's also a trans woman, but she is not out, and she is not out to anybody. And she is male presenting at this point. And she sort of looks to Abigail for guidance on where to go, because she's very concerned. This is not, I mean, small town South Dakota is not, just full of resources, right? And they form a relationship that's kind of, they can't call it friendship, because it is a problematic relationship in ways, because it's teacher-student, but the student is helping the teacher. There's that gray area with student and teacher, and it's just a difficult thing. Plus, they have what's going on in their own lives. With Erica, she is divorced from her wife, who she still loves. The wife is with someone else, but she still has a friendly-ish relationship with her wife. They're still in each other's lives. So, and clearly the wife, she's not out to anybody, so the wife doesn't know. There's all of that going on. Abigail has the issue, her sister is very supportive and is very supportive of her, but the rest of her family is not. And her parents are, you need to come home. We're going to get the police involved if you don't come home. So there's that going on. There's also a lot of, and I know I said when I was talking about the Grief Keeper, sometimes YA doesn't work for me. And I don't want to say this is YA because it isn't, but there are issues that seniors in high school just kind of generally sort of sometimes have. And there's these seniors in high school things. There's a lot of friendship discussion in it. I loved this book so much. so much. I try not to compare books because sometimes it can be unfair, and I'm not really comparing these two books, but I did recently read, as I've talked about in past videos, Detransition Baby by Tori Peters, and I read that for a book group, and we were kind of all in agreement that didn't completely work. And for me, I will say, I don't think that I think most people probably shared my opinion that there were things in that book that were great. It really talked about the trans experience and everything great, and we learned a lot. But the situation, the frame of the story, the conceit of the story, that was Tori Peters never really sold that to us. And in some ways, if you think about it, like a trans student helping a trans teacher, that doesn't really, but Emily St. it does. If you just kind of hear it on paper, like, oh, how's that going to work? Well, Emily St. James makes it work. It is so well done. It is not a super literary, I don't want to say it's not super, I hate that term literary in terms of this, but it's not like, the writing is very approachable, and it's one thing that this book does really well that I love is when you have books from multiple viewpoints, which this one is. It's mostly just between Erica. You get Erica's chapters and Abigail's chapters. Sometimes you can't differentiate the voices, and you can in this one. And Abigail is a 17-year-old girl. She is a 17-year-old girl. I have a 16-year-old girl, not that different. Just gets that voice down, and then it's completely different for Erica. And this is such an honest book. Emily St. James goes there, and there's a lot of friendship going on in this book between different people. There's a little, the romantic elements in this book are definitely sort of not there are some, just because of who the characters are. They're not the focus. It's mostly a friendship book. And the way that is done, because some of them are difficult. Actually, when anyone with Abigail, it's a difficult relationship. And yeah, Abigail and Erica's relationship is really problematic just by what it is. And Emily St. James does not shy away from that. She goes into it, and she acknowledges the fact it's problematic. There's discussions about how it's problematic, but it's still a beautiful relationship. The writing on this book really reminded me of something, and this is totally kind of one of those weird off-topic things. When the movie Wicked came out, you'd see lots of little reels and clips and stuff of interviews, press junkets and everything. And I saw one with Cynthia Erivo, and I don't remember who was interviewing her. So, because I didn't think this would come into play, so it didn't stay in my mind, but I do remember the sentiment really well. She apparently, on top of everything else, also teaches at, I think, the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts in London, teaches like musical theater. And she was talking to whoever it was who was interviewing her about voices and finding your voice. And she was saying she works with these young people, older teens, younger 20s, and everybody has something that's blocking their voice. And she's talking about singing and being able to sing authentically. Everybody has something that's blocking their voice. And the magic is when you can move past that, when you can move that block aside and really let your own voice come out. And that's what I felt the writing of this book was. It was so wonderful. And, you know, we got the small town, Dan, the people in those small are the people you would find in a small town, and they aren't all stereotypical. The things people were talking about and the way people were thinking in the fall of 2016, that is very clear. I have no criticism whatsoever of this book. I know that Mariandria really loved it too. This is definitely, you know, when I did my 6 down, 6 to go tag, I said, I think this one's going to be on my list. Like I had that little list that I keep going of my best books of the year. I do 10 for nonfiction, 10 for fiction. And if I read one that I know is going to be on there, just put it on the list right away. And then at the end of the year, I'll fill it out. I said, I think this one's going to be on the list. And yes, but I didn't expect it to jump to the top of the list. It is that good. So if I could buy you all a copy of Woodworking to read, I would do that. I would put it in all of your hands because I think this book needs to be read. Yeah, because it's not, I mean, it's so honest and it doesn't feel like it has an agenda. I kind of felt that a little bit with the Transition Baby. This one doesn't feel like it has an agenda. It just wants to explore friendships and the relationships that people have with their own experience and being your true self. And it's just fantastic. Like, just go get this book. Woodworking by Emily St. James. Not Woodworm. Also a good book, but very different. You will be very confused if you pick up Woodworm instead of Woodworking and think that's what you're reading. You will be like, what the hell is Melinda talking about? No. Woodworking by Emily St. James. I want to thank Brett. I'm going to link down below an interview, the interview that I saw that kind of put this on my radar that Emily did with Emily St. James, because it's fantastic. All of Brett's interviews are fantastic, but that one I think will really get you wanting to read this book. Definitely fantastic. It's, as I said, as of right now, it's my best book of the year. And I have a feeling it's still going to be my best novel of the year come the end of the year. Because this was such a profound reading experience for me that I don't see how anything can surpass it at this point. But I'm starting to ramble. Just go get this book. Just go do it and then read it and then tell everybody else you know to read it, because this book is fantastic. And I'm just going to end it there. Because I'm feeling like I'm almost tearing up over this book. Like, it was such an experience reading. But I'm babbling. Okay. Like, subscribe. Join my Discord. I'm doing the emoji thing, aren't I? Why don't you leave me an emoji of your favorite backyard barbecue food or grill? Because I know that barbecue and grill are just like in Oregon, it's used interchangeably, but it means different things in different worlds. So like if you're having a backyard cookout, your favorite backyard cookout food, I may have to guess what some of them are. I mean, if you put an emoji of potato salad up, I may have to guess at it, but that's okay. That's part of the fun. Anyway, there you go. Like, subscribe, join my Discord, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye. Bye.